A growing number of states has actually introduced legislation to limit how public school teachers can talk about issues of race and sexism in the classroom. Many of those include banning what's called critical race theory. That's an academic movement that teaches about the role racism plays in shaping our nation and society. CBS's Jericka Duncan takes a closer look at the debate and hears from a teacher in Tennessee about how a new law there could affect her classroom.
The way we tell our history is powerful and important.
Nashville fifth grade teacher Brittany Paschal is in the middle of a nationwide debate over how race can and should be taught in schools.
The discomfort is no excuse not to teach the real history.
Tennessee is among several states that recently passed GOP champion laws banning the teaching of certain concepts dealing with racism and sexism.
I think that it's an assault on the craft of teaching to tell educators who do this every day, who go into classrooms every day and do the hard work of teaching, that they are not qualified enough to make the decisions that are best for their students.
The new Tennessee law outlines in broad terms topics that cannot be discussed in the classroom. Among them, that a political system is inherently racist or sexist, or designed by a particular race or sex to oppress others, and that a race or sex is inherently privileged, racist, sexist, or oppressive.
What makes you think that people were being taught that before or believed that before?
We don't have clear evidence of it being overtly taught in Tennessee schools.
So is this preemptive?
It is, yeah.
Tennessee Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson co-sponsored the bill.
We want our teachers to feel free to teach about the complicated history of our nation and the progress that we've made. And I think that inequities that exist in society, there's probably a myriad of reasons that they exist, and I would think that a teacher should be able to talk about.
But racism is a big one.
Perhaps. And again, we're not trying to stifle a conversation in a classroom. We want our curricula and what's being taught to be age appropriate.
Johnson says he also doesn't want children to leave a classroom feeling ashamed because of their race.
Our kids should be taught history, and we have some dark moments in our nation's history, and those moments should be taught. But it can be done in a manner that doesn't leave a school child leaving the classroom feeling guilty because of who they are.
It's not about trying to make white people feel guilty or make white people feel bad for being white.
Ohio University Associate Professor Vincent Youngkoons has taught critical race theory for nearly 15 years. He says it's about understanding contemporary racism so it can be realized and dismantled within our society.
Critical race theory has nothing to do with being racist. It's about challenging racism. And in fact, critical race theory is extraordinarily patriotic to ask us to do the hard work to be a democratic, free society.
So what is this really about? What is the fear and the concern as we talk more and more openly about racism in our country?
When you talk about parents who are concerned, I think that they're being frightened intentionally. Strategists on the Republican side are trying to pull on people's fear, to lure them into thinking these horrible things about critical race theory, and to get votes and to mobilize voters for the midterms.
Critical race theory is bigoted, it is a lie, and it is every bit as racist as the Klansmen in white sheets.
From the political arena to school board meetings, the battle over critical race theory continues to heat up.
Critical race theory is anti-white, and it's not American.
Critical race theory adds another layer of complexity in how simple American history is taught in schools. Right now, there is no national standard for how and what history is taught in K-12 schools. Each state sets its own standard for what students should learn. In February of 2020, CBS News analyzed every state in Washington, D.C.'s social studies standard. Back then, we found that 7 states did not directly mention slavery, 8 did not mention the civil rights movement, and only 2 mentioned white supremacy. We also found problematic images and lessons in commonly used history textbooks, like this map referring to enslaved Africans in 1775 as immigrants.
Every part of our past impacts our present.
Paschal, who is also involved in local activism, told us she plans to continue to create a safe space for her students to learn.
Do you think this law will change how you teach currently?
No.
Why not?
I am a trained practitioner on how to make sure that every student in my class has a culturally responsive, rigorous, and joyful learning environment. And I'm going to continue to do that.
Jerika Duncan, CBS News.
Now in Tennessee, if teachers do not follow that law, the state education commissioner can choose to withhold funding from their school. Pascal finds that alarming, while Senator Johnson said he hopes it never has to come to that.